Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I am Dhananjana. So today I have brought you the third lesson of English Medium Business and Accounting Studies for grade 10. So the name of our lesson is Business Organizations. This is a pretty long lesson, but don't worry, I will make this a very simple and an interesting lesson for you guys. So first of all, let us see what are business organizations. So a business organization generally consists of an individual or a group of individuals working together to produce goods and services required to fulfill human needs and wants. So that was pretty easy to understand. And next I have written that different types of business organizations can be classified into three depending on various criteria. So now let us move on and see what are those three classifications of the business depending on these criteria. So as you can see in here, these are the three classifications of business organizations. So the first classification is classification of business organizations based on scale. So the scale of a business depends on different criteria. What are they? The amount of capital invested in a business, number of employees, the amount of energy used, and the market share of the business. So as you can see, these are the criteria we pay our attention when we conclude the scale of the business. So depending on the scale of the business can be classified into two parts: small and medium scale businesses and large scale businesses. So now let us pay our attention to small and medium scale businesses. So what are small and medium scale businesses? The businesses with a small amount of capital invested with a small number of employees and having a small market share relative to large scale businesses are known as small and medium scale businesses. So what does that mean? If the business has only a small amount of capital, I don't need to describe to you about capital because you are very familiar with that word because we discussed about them in our previous lessons. So there's a small amount of capital and a small number of employees and having a small market share. And also there's another point. The businesses which employ less than 25 employees according to the Census and Statistics Department are considered as small scale businesses. So as we told before, if there is only a small number of employees, it is a small and medium scale business. So here it states about the number of the employees, that is less than 25. So now you know what are small scale businesses. So now let us see what are large scale businesses. Okay, so the businesses that have invested a large amount of capital and have employed a large number of employees and also have a large market share and have the ability to influence the respective industry are known as large scale businesses. So from the description itself, it states large amount of capital and large number of employees, large market share. So everything is large. Therefore, we conclude them as large scale businesses. For example, a factory employing a large number of workers. So Now we talked about the classification of business organizations based on scale. So after that, we are going to be moving towards the classification of business organizations based on the objective. So that means, what are these business organizations hoping to gain? What are their objectives? So according to that, those businesses, small and large scale businesses, can be divided into two parts. So those classifications are for-profit businesses and not-for-profit businesses. So if we focus on for-profit businesses, from the name itself we can think that it is thinking of gaining profits. That means the main objective of that business is to gain profit. So let's see. When the main objective of the business is to earn profits, it is known as profit-oriented or for-profit businesses. And here we have not-for-profit businesses. That also, from the topic itself we see that the objective is not gaining profits. When the main objective of the business is to ensure the welfare of the members and the society, it is known as not-for-profit businesses. That means the main objective of this business is not to gain a profit. The objective is to ensure the welfare of the members of the society. Okay, so up to now we learned what are business organizations, and from the three classifications we learned the first classification, that means the classification of business organization based on scale. And then we discussed about the second classification of business organization based on the objective. And next we are moving on to the classification of business organization based on the ownership. So, ownership means the person who owns it. This classification is based on the ownership. So, it also can be divided into two parts as private sector business organizations and public sector business organizations. So let us see what is private sector business organizations. The businesses owned by an individual or a group of individuals are known as private sector business organizations. That means this is owned by an individual or a group of individuals. So what are the examples for private sector business organizations? Sole proprietorship, partnership, incorporated companies, cooperated societies and other associations. So I'll be discussing them in detail with you. So for now, just see. Here sole proprietorship, partnership and incorporated companies are for-profit businesses, and corporate societies, other associations are not-for-profit businesses. So from that you can see in the private sector business organizations also there are these two classifications. The classifications we learned earlier. So you should remember that also. The first three are for-profit and the last two are not-for-profit. Now let's hop on to public sector business organizations. So what are public sector business organizations? The businesses funded or owned by the government are known as public sector business organizations. So these businesses are not owned by individuals. They are owned by the government. And now these are the examples. Businesses registered and owned under provincial councils. and local government institutions, state companies, state corporations and departments. So here also you can see state companies are for profit and state corporations and departments are not for profit. So there you see, we learned all the three classifications from just this chart. So I hope you understood everything I taught you. So now let us discuss about these examples which belong to private sector and public sector businesses in detail. So first of all, we are going to be discussing about sole proprietorship, which is a private for-profit business. So there are two classifications here. It is a private sector business organization and also a for-profit business. So what is sole proprietorship? The businesses owned by an individual are known as sole proprietorship. Here by this word sole means one person, an individual. So from that itself we can conclude that this is owned by an individual. So the most common type of business organization in almost all the countries in the world is sole proprietorship. That means in most of the countries, the most common type of business organization is sole proprietorship. So what are the characteristics of sole proprietorship? Capital is provided by a single person who is the owner. So the capital is provided by the owner and the profits and losses to be borne alone. That means if this business earns a profit, then that is also enjoyed by the owner. And if there is a loss incurred by this sole proprietorship, then the owner should bear the loss by his own, because it is a sole proprietorship. Only one individual is owning that. And the next, unlimited liability of the owner. Well, that's a new word over there. What is liability? Liability is another word for responsibility. So this owner has an unlimited liability or responsibility towards his business. That means, for example, just think the owner took a loan for his business and now he doesn't have money to pay it. But as he, the individual, is the owner of that, he has to pay it. However, maybe he should sell his property, cars or anything to pay off his debts. So therefore, the owner has an unlimited liability. And next, no legal personality. That means this sole proprietorship cannot conduct any legal operations by the business name. That means, for example, entering into contracts, purchasing vehicles, obtaining bank loans. So those should be done by the personal name of the owner, because it cannot be done by the business name. And here, no continued existence. For example, think the owner of this business died, or he is not in a good mental condition to continue the business. So then there is no one to continue this business. So if the owner dies or he is in a mental disorder, then the business cannot exist anymore. So and here, not mandatory to register. It is not really essential to register sole proprietorship. But I'm also going to be discussing with you the procedure we should follow to register a sole proprietorship. So let's carry on with the characteristics, and next I'm going to be discussing about the procedure we should follow when we are registering a sole proprietorship. Okay, the next characteristic is controlling and taking decisions alone is done by the owner. As the owner is an individual, a single person, the controlling and taking decisions are done alone. So in here I have divided those characteristics we just discussed into advantages and disadvantages. So an advantage is convenient to start because the sole proprietorship legal requirements are very low. That means they are minimum. And the cost of establishing is also low. Therefore, it is very easy or convenient to start. And the next advantage is all profits belong to the owner. If the business incurs a profit, then all the profit belongs to the owner. And the privacy of the business information is secured because the business is owned by the owner. He is the only person. Now if this is a baker shop, then he is the only person who knows the secret recipes, so no one can steal them. So that's just an example. Likewise, the information is secured. And the next thing is ability to use own skills at the best. Now if a person is working for another man in another business, then he just only works for the salary. But when it is his own business, then he thinks that he should put his own skills, the best of his skills to the business. And that is also an advantage. The next thing is independent decision making. The owner has just the things we discussed in the characteristics, so I am not going to explain this. And next we have disadvantages. Unlimited liability of the owner, that also we discussed. If he has any debts to pay, then he should maybe sacrifice his own properties to pay them. And difficulties in raising capital. Maybe the man is not very rich, he may be poor. Therefore, he has a difficulty in raising capital. And no continuous existence. Individual decisions of the owner can be unsuccessful. Maybe because he is not having a good experience, or he is not a skillful businessman. So, those things happen. And no legal personality, just as we discussed. Now let us discuss about the registration of a sole proprietorship. Early in the characteristics, I told you that sole proprietorship is not very essential. It was not mandatory to register, but in here it states that if a sole proprietorship is conducted in a different name other than the full name of its owner, it is mandatory to register the name of the business. Now for example, think I am starting a business. Now my name is Dhananjana. If I put my full name into the business as the business name, then it does not need to be registered. But if I put something like Dhananjana Stores or Dhananjana's Place or something, then it should be registered. And the registrar of the respective provincial council is the authorized officer to register business names. So, who is the authorized officer of registering business names? The registrar of the respective provincial council. So, you should keep these in mind. Now, let us see the legal procedure of registering sole proprietorship. So there are 3 steps as you can see here. So the first step is you should obtain the relevant application form from the respective divisional secretariat office, and these 2 following documents are required for this purpose. What are they? An application form to register the business name of the sole proprietorship. And the next thing is an application form to obtain the required report from Gram Niladhari regarding the registration. So those are the 2 application forms that require to register a sole proprietorship. So the next step, the second step is handing over the certified report to the Grama Niladhari and duly completed application form along with the registration fee of the divisional secretary. So in here I have underlined the registration fee because the registration fee is determined by the respective provincial council. So the third and the last step is, after considering about documents, the divisional secretary will issue the certificate of registration of business name, and it is required to display the certificate at the business place. And it states that it is required to submit an application to register the business name within 14 days of commencing a sole proprietorship. So now we know why we are registering the sole proprietorship and the legal procedure of registering sole proprietorship. And now let us discuss about the advantages of registering the business name. Provide an identity and recognition. Now if I just say that my business name is Dhananjana, well, it's just like a name. It's like a name of a person. But if I put something else to my shop, then it is recognized by the people. It has its own identity. Now it's just like we are naming two twins with the same name, so we can't recognize them. But if I put one name to another to one twin and the other name to another twin, then they can be recognized. So just like that, instead of putting the full name of the owner, it is better to put another name because it provides an identity and a recognition. And the next thing is, provides an ownership of the business name. Now when there is a business name for the business, it provides an ownership. And the next thing is, easy to obtain loans. If there is a registered name to the business, then it is easy to obtain loans. And provide a qualification to obtain incentive given by the government. So if the name of the business or the sole proprietorship is registered, it is a qualification to obtain the incentives given by the government. So I hope you understood them. So that's how we're going to be discussing about sole proprietorship. So now let us discuss about partnership. So partnership is also a private for-profit business. So the relationship among persons conducting a business in common with an objective of earning profit is known as partnership. So that means two or more people are getting together to conduct this business with the common objective. And what might be that? Well, it is earning profits. And another thing you should remember is, the Partnership Ordinance of 1890 affects partnerships. And what are the characteristics of partnerships? The number of members in a partnership. So 2 members minimum, and according to the Companies Act number 7 of 2007, 20 members maximum to commence a partnership. That means there should be 2 members minimum or 20 members maximum to start a partnership. And the next characteristics is the partnership agreement. The agreement among its partners when the partnership commences. That means when the partnership is commencing or starting, there is an agreement between the partners. So it can be written, oral or implied. And according to the Prevention of Fraud Ordinance, if the initial capital of the partnership is greater than 1000 rupees, a partnership is required to be conducted under a written agreement. So this written agreement is known as partnership deed. So what did that mean? Now we told that when a partnership is commencing or starting, the partners are coming up with an agreement. So it could be written, oral or implied. And if the first capital of the partnership is greater than 1000 rupees, it should be conducted under a written agreement, which is known as the partnership deed. So why? Because it is under the Prevention of Fraud Ordinance. So I hope you understood that point. It is a bit complex point, so you should study it well. And here, unlimited liability of partners, just as we told in sole proprietorship. If there's a debt you have to pay, then the partners should sacrifice their properties to pay off their debts, and no separate legal identity. There also it is the same as sole proprietorship. And no continued existence. If one partner is dead or mentally in a disorder, so he cannot continue the business, the partnership. And not mandatory to register. That is also, if the partnership is conducted under a different name instead of the full names of the partners, that also should be registered by the registrar of the respective provincial council. So these characteristics are very similar to sole proprietorship characteristics. And next let us discuss about the partnership advantages and disadvantages. So in here also they have been dividing the characteristics into these two groups. So I'll just read them. Can take collective decisions. As this is a partnership, they can take decisions collectively. And convenient to commence, just as sole proprietorship. Can raise more capital. As there are a lot of partners in this business, it can be used to raise more capital. And share liability among partners. So for goodness sake, this liability is shared among the partners. If there's a debt to be paid, then the partners are sharing the liability. And here, can utilize different skills of partners. As there are a lot of partners in the partnership, they all have different skills. So this would be an advantage to the partnership. And the disadvantages are no continued existence. And profit is shared among the partners. As there are partners in this business, if the business takes a profit or incurs a profit, it is shared among the partners. So that is a disadvantage. And conflicts among partners. It really happens when taking decisions. Now, one partner says that his idea is the best one or his decision is the best one, and the others doesn't accept it. So, likewise, there could be conflicts. And unlimited liability. Even though it is shared, the liability is unlimited. And no legal personality. So, I hope that the topic partnership is clear to you now. So next let us pay attention to incorporated companies, which is also a for-profit and a private business. So what are incorporated companies? A firm which is registered under the Companies Act number 7 of 2007. So you might have noticed this is the act which comes into partnerships and many others related to businesses. So it is vital you should remember this. So this act with a legal personality which can raise capital by issuing shares and the liability of the shareholders being limited is an incorporated company. So this is a bit complex explanation. So if I make this simple for you, this is a firm which is registered under the Companies Act number 7 of 2007. And not like the other partnership and sole proprietorship, this has a legal personality. And as there is a legal personality, incorporated companies can collect or raise capital by issuing shares and the liability of shareholders are limited. So from this itself you can understand that incorporated companies are owned by shareholders. So this is known as incorporated companies. So it is easy. Okay, so what are the characteristics of incorporated companies? Incorporation under the Companies Act number 7 of 2007. As per the provisions of the Act, the duly completed relevant documents should be submitted by the registrar of the companies. So that means according to the Act I mentioned before, which is Companies Act number 7 of 2007, the completed documents should be submitted by the registrar of companies. And the next characteristic is continued existence. Now as this is owned by shareholders, if one shareholder dies or if he is in a mental disorder, then another shareholder can take his part. So this is having a continued existence. And the ability to raise capital by issuing shares. As there's a lot of shareholders, by issuing these shares they can raise capital. And next we have the ability to register with limited liability. The liability is very limited. And now if we pay our attention to the advantages of incorporated companies, can raise more capital and it has a continued existence. Limited liability, and here there is a new one. What is that? Managed by a board of directors who are selected and appointed by the shareholders. And the next advantage is receiving a legal personality. So the company can enter into contracts, appoint agents, and can acquire assets and pay taxes in its business name. So there's only 2 disadvantages mentioned here. What are they? Greater level of legal provisions. Now as this has to be registered and everything, there's a lot of legal provisions. And the next thing is profits and ownership are shared. Now earlier in the partnership only the profits, and now the ownership is also shared because these are owned by shareholders. Okay, so now we finished talking about private for-profit businesses. We talked about the sole proprietorship, partnership and incorporated companies. So I hope you understood everything I taught you. And now let us move on to private not-for-profit businesses. So first of all we have corporate companies. So what are societies. So what are corporate societies? A corporate society is a democratically controlled, independent organization which aims to achieve common needs of group of individuals voluntarily gathered and enjoy a collective ownership. So, this cooperative society is an independent organization. It is controlled by an independent organization, and also it aims to achieve common needs of groups of people voluntarily gathered and enjoy a collective ownership. So here also the ownership is shared. And this cooperative society can be started with at least 10 members, and the capital is similarly provided by the membership subscriptions. So that is easy to understand. And next we have required to registered under the Cooperative Societies Act number 5 of 1972. Now earlier we discussed about the Companies Act number 7 of 2007. But in here, cooperative societies are registered under Cooperative Society Act number 5 of 1972. So, examples for these cooperative societies are Sri Lankan Multipurpose Cooperative Society and Sri Lanka Coconut Producers Cooperative Society, and the Thrift and Credit Cooperative Society or the SANESA. And what are the characteristics of cooperative societies? Voluntary and open membership. The membership and the volunteering is open to all. Collective ownership of member. So these are collectively owned. And common expectations and needs. The business have common expectations and needs. The next characteristic is democratic control, because it is controlled by a board of directors elected by its members and decision taking based on the majority's consent. So this is very democratic, peaceful. So what are the advantages of cooperative societies? Democratic control and acting for the well-being of members, shared economic benefits, and the last advantage is government provide various incentives for conducting cooperative societies. Even though this is very democratic and acting for the well-being of the members, still it has some disadvantages. And what are they? Limited capital. This company has, or the society has, limited capital and should adhere only to the stipulated cooperative policies. These are the disadvantages of cooperative societies. And next we'll be talking about associations, which is also a private, not-for-profit business. So, what are associations? Associations are organizations with the objective of the social well-being. So, these associations are having the objective of a social well-being. And the examples for associations are sports club, farmers association. And also another thing you should remember about associations are they are established in order to achieve well-being of the members and to accomplish a community service or a charitable activity. So this simply means that associations have the objective of social well-being. Now we are moving on to public, not-for-profit businesses. So first let us talk about state corporations. State corporations are businesses fully owned by or the majority is owned by the government. So what does that mean? This corporation or the business is owned by the government, maybe fully or the majority. And it is controlled by a board of directors also appointed by the government. And state corporations are also called commissions, authorities, boards, and bureaus. So, examples for state corporations are Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, Sri Lanka Ports Authority, Coconut Development Authority, Export Insurance Board, Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment, and State Pharmaceuticals Corporation of Sri Lanka, which is also known as the SPC. And what are the characteristics of these state corporations? The government ownership and control. Just as we told before, the government is a person or the group which owns and controls these corporations. And the objective of providing services in common. As I told you in the beginning, this is a public, not-for-profit business. Therefore, the main objective is to provide services in common as this is public. And there is a legal personality, continued existence, and can commence either under a special act or a generally existing act of the Parliament. So, what are the advantages and disadvantages of state corporations? Profits are owned by the public. They are the advantages. To reduce the monopoly effects of private sector. And it is appropriate for the provision of essential services. So these I don't need to explain it to you because they are easy to understand. And here disadvantages. Absence of independence in decision making. Need to adhere to financial regulations of the government. So those are the disadvantages. They are also really easy to understand. So now let us hop on to departments, which is also a public not-for-profit business. So what are departments? So these state departments are institutions that will directly or fully governed by the government under a ministry. So these departments are directly and fully governed by the government under a ministry. So examples: Sri Lanka Railway Department, Sri Lanka Postal Department. And here you can see the characteristics. Ownership and control vested in the government. That means it is owned by the government and governed by the Parliament and respective ministry. Management and administration is through the heads of the department. So here you can see how, by whom it is owned, by whom it is governed, and who manages and does the administration. And here continued existence, funded by the government. As this is owned by the government, the departments are funded by the government. And in legal activities, the head of the department should represent the department using his designation. So not by the department name, by the designation of the head of the department. And here there is the advantages and disadvantages of department. So the first advantage is departments provide essential services to the public that will not be otherwise provided by the private sector. So, most of the services provided by the departments are not provided by the private sector. So, that is an advantage. The departments will handle long-term development activities which require a large amount of funds. So normally private sector businesses, maybe they are rich or maybe they are poor. So it depends, but in departments, as they are owned by the government, even though it needs a large amount of fund and a long-term development, they will be handled. And here, a large number of employees are working in departments, providing more employment opportunities. As a large number of employees are needed when working in departments, so there's employment opportunities to people who are searching for jobs. The department provides services for the well-being of the public without a profit motive. Now, if we take the railway department, it provides you the service, but the cost is very low because it doesn't have a profit motive but only the well-being of the public. Right. So, what are the disadvantages? The decision making will be delayed due to the approval required from the parliament and respective ministry. Now, if the department needs to take a quick decision, it cannot be done because it needs the approval which is required from the parliament and the respective ministry. So, that would be a disadvantage. And the departments have conducted activities in accordance with the provision in government circulars. Okay, so up to now we discussed about the for-profit and not-for-profit businesses which belonged into both private and public sectors. So I hope you got understood everything I told you. So the last part of this lesson is selecting an appropriate business organization. Some factors that should be considered by businessmen when selecting an appropriate type of business organization are given below. So what are the criteria we should be paying attention when we are selecting an appropriate type of business organization? The first thing is based on the objective. Do you have, now for example, just think you are the businessman. So do you have a profit objective, profit motive? Do you want to gain a profit? Or do you want, or do you have a social welfare objective? So that should be considered when you are basing on the objective. And next we have based on the scale. Do you need a small scale business? Are you thinking of starting small and then thinking of big things or large things later? So that depends on your decision. Should it be large scale or small scale? And the next thing is based on who will perform management activities. When we are talking about that, let me explain to you what management is. Management is a process of planning, organizing, leading and controlling the resources of a business in order to achieve the objectives of a business. So that is what the manager has to do. Okay, so this is the end of the lesson, and by what I taught you today, I hope that you got an idea what business organizations are and what are the classification of business organizations, and what are sole proprietorship, how to register it, partnerships, incorporated companies, and those things. And also, by the last part I taught you, I am pretty sure that you might be able to select an appropriate business organization. Okay, so this was a very long lesson, but I hope you got everything I taught you. And if you have any questions regarding this lesson, please let me know from the comments below. Keep watching all my videos, including English medium history and Buddhism. So for now, bye bye.